Scotland has long been a land steeped in bloodshed and turmoil, with its rugged landscapes bearing witness to centuries of conflict and strife. From the relentless battles for independence to the fierce clan wars that pitted family against family, the nation's history is marked by a relentless struggle for power, identity, and survival. This stain of bloodshed and warfare has shaped the very fabric of Scotland, leaving an indelible mark on its culture, its people, and its land. Dig deeper and you'll discover that our violent past stretches back further than just Robert the Bruce and William Wallace, reaching into the era of Norse raiders and beyond. Perhaps the most famous of these was the Battle of Largs, where Scots clashed with the Norsemen in 1263. This battle was a crucial turning point in Scotland's efforts to defend itself against formidable Norse invaders, ultimately leading to the Scots repelling them. The victory at Largs marked a significant moment in Scotland's history, showcasing the resilience and determination of its people. However, numerous other raids also shaped the Scotland we know today. One reportedly notable event occurred in the year 1010 on the outskirts of Montrose, known as the Battle of Barry. This confrontation played a crucial role in the region's history, contributing to the ongoing struggles against invaders and shaping the nation's development. The account of the battle was first recorded by the 16th century Scottish historian Hector Boece. Boece recounts that Sveno, King of Denmark in England, upon hearing the news of his army's defeat at Mortlach, modern-day Dufftown, ordered a naval task force to sail for Scotland, to an area that at the time was known as Alaba. Part of the force departed from Denmark and the remainder from the River Thames near London, both under the command of the Scandinavian general Camus. According to legend, the army camped at St Abb's Head for several days before sailing north and landing at Lunan Bay in Angus. After plundering Montrose, they advanced inland and razed the town of Brecon. Camus received word that King Malcolm II had brought the Scots army to Dundee and ordered his Danish forces to march south, reaching the coast of Panbride. The Scots troops encamped at Barry, 2 miles to the west. The two forces clashed near the Loch Burn, close to where Carnoustie town centre now stands. The battle was fierce, and the Loch Burn supposedly ran red with the blood of the fallen. As defeat became apparent, Camus fled to the hills, pursued by Robert de Keith. Robert caught up with and killed Camus at Bray Downey. Afterwards, King Malcolm is said to have dipped his fingers into Camus's blood and ran them along the top of Robert's shield, thus creating the red and gold striped design still used today in the Keith coat of arms. Where Camus met his end, the Camus cross stands today, erected in his memory. However, according to local tradition, the Stone of Morphy, located just outside Montrose, is believed to mark the actual spot where he was likely slain in a brutal manner. Montrose, situated on Scotland's east coast, has a history shaped by its prominent location and maritime heritage. In the 10th century, the town faced Danish raids, with records indicating it was sacked and razed in 980 AD. By the 12th century, Montrose emerged as a crucial trading hub, contributing revenues to Resteneth Priory under Malcolm IV. William the Lion later built Red Castle nearby in 1178, and by 1198 its charter was recorded for the last time. A convent dedicated to the Virgin Mary was reportedly founded in 1230 by Alan Durward. Its exact location is now lost to history. In 1296, during the Wars of Independence, Edward I visited with a large contingent, staying at Montrose Castle, and it's here he allegedly humiliated Scottish King John de Balliol by publicly stripping him of his royal insignia and status. The English King's Act prompted 12 prominent landowners of the town to swear allegiance to Edward I to protect themselves and the townspeople. In response, William Wallace destroyed the English-manned castle the following year, a sacking so bloody the Scots troops reportedly spared none and killed every English soldier in sight. By the late 15th century, the town faced challenges from the lairds of Dun, who violently ransacked and took possession of property and cattle, prompting intervention by James IV to protect its inhabitants' rights and property. Dating back to at least the medieval period, Montrose grew as a bustling port town, vital for trade with continental Europe. Over time, Montrose evolved into a prosperous borough, gaining royal charters and expanding its influence. Between 1677 and the summer of 1678, construction began on a dike across Montrose Basin intended to drain and reclaim its northern half, overseen by Drona, a Dutch engineer. However, the project met a swift end when it was destroyed by a storm shortly after. Maggie Cowie, an elderly woman, vehemently opposed the scheme and reportedly made blasphemous remarks against those involved. She was subsequently, no doubt to silence her, tried for witchcraft, found guilty, and executed by burning at the stake on the 14th of January 1679. Montrose also witnessed the conclusion of the 15, the ill-fated 1715 Jacobite rebellion. As the uprising neared its end after nearly 6 months, from September 1715 to February 1716, James Francis Edward Stuart, known as the Old Pretender, arrived in Montrose. He spent his final night in Scotland on the 4th of February 1716, before departing for exile in France. 30 years later, the town played a pivotal role again when it was held for his son, Charles Edward Stuart, also known as Bonnie Prince Charlie, or the Young Pretender. In February 1746, Montrose Harbour saw the largest naval battle of the Jacobite Wars. During the 18th century, Montrose thrived as a major centre for smuggling and briefly profited from the slave trade. By the 20th century, its strategic importance became evident again during World War I, when it became a key military base for the Royal Flying Corps. This marked the beginning of its association with aviation, which continued to grow with the establishment of RAF Montrose, an important airfield during World War II and beyond. In 1912, the British government initiated plans for 12 air stations operated by the newly established Royal Flying Corps. Directed by Winston Churchill, then the First Lord of the Admiralty, the first of these air stations was established at Montrose to protect Royal Navy bases at Rosyth, Cromarty and Scapa Flow. On the 13th of February 1913, 5 aircraft of No. 2 Squadron, Royal Flying Corps, departed from Farnborough on a 450-mile journey northward. Over 13 days they completed the flight, landing at Upper Dysart Farm, 3 miles south of Montrose, thereby establishing the first operational military airfield in Great Britain. Major Burke, commanding officer No. 2 Squadron, soon identified a more suitable site at Broomfield Farm, 1 mile north of Montrose. The flat terrain, 30 feet above sea level, sandy soil for good drainage, and proximity to the railway made it an ideal location. By the end of 1913, 3 hangars of Indian Army shed design, known as Major Burke's sheds, were erected there, and No. 2 Squadron moved to this new base in early 1914. With the outbreak of World War I on the 28th of July 1914, No. 2 Squadron left Montrose on the 3rd of August, relocating to Farnborough. War with Germany was declared the next day, and by the 8th of August, the squadron's ground crew and equipment departed for deployment at Boulogne. Although No. 2 Squadron didn't return to Montrose during the war, the airfield became pivotal for training. American, Canadian and British squadrons were stationed there, contributing significantly to the war effort on the Western Front. Over the decades since its pivotal role in World War I, RAF Montrose has not only been the hub of military aviation, but has also garnered a reputation as one of the most haunted locations in Scotland. Desmond Phelps Perry Lucius Studdart Arthur was born on the 31st of March 1884 into an affluent Irish family, an upbringing reflected by his aristocratic name. Following his father's death when Desmond was just 4 years old, he and his brother Charles inherited the Glenomira estate. After their mother's remarriage and subsequent move to Dublin, Desmond attended Portora Royal School in Enniskillen. However, tragedy struck again when both his mother and stepfather both passed away in 1902, leaving the brothers to navigate life somewhat independently. Known for their spirited nature, they found their calling in their military careers, with Desmond joining the Army Motor Reserve in 1908, before becoming an officer in the 5th Battalion, Royal Munster Fusiliers. Desmond Arthur's life seemed intertwined with fate, as evidenced by the incidents such as the 1905 fire that destroyed Glenomira, his ancestral home in Galway. While some speculated about his premonitory connection to an early demise, Desmond pursued a life of adventure and achievement, setting speed records and ultimately embracing aviation after a fateful encounter at an aviation event at Leopardstown Racecourse in 1910. By 1912, he'd obtained his pilot's licence and transferred to the prestigious 2nd Squadron, Royal Flying Corps, eventually arriving at the airbase in Montrose in April 1913. Around 7 in the morning on May 23, 1913, Arthur headed out on a training flight in his BE-2 biplane, high above Lunan Bay. Approximately 45 minutes later, flying at an altitude of about 2,000 feet, disaster struck when the aircraft suddenly disintegrated in midair. Eyewitnesses, including the farm grieve of Captain Blair Imrie, recounted hearing a loud crash and then witnessing Arthur's body plummeting silently from the sky. The macabre scene unfolded with his body falling straight, arms extended above his head, tragically confirming his fatal descent. The plane's right wing had snapped off, ejecting Arthur from his seatbelt and throwing him clear of the spinning plane. Medical assistants rushed to the scene, locating Arthur's body 156 yards from the wreckage, near the old Lunan railway station, but they could offer no aid. Aeroplane magazine, reporting on the incident, noted that Arthur had initially found the plane's performance satisfactory during an initial test flight. However, it was the subsequent extended second flight that proved to be fatal. Arthur, a well-liked presence around the base, was given a military funeral. His solemn procession wound through the quiet streets of Montrose before he was laid to rest in Sleepy Hillock Cemetery. Yet, in the stillness that followed, memories of Arthur began to fade. Then after about 3 years, whispers began to circulate, and tales soon emerged of strange apparitions and unexplained phenomena lingering on the base. An investigation by the Royal Aero Club concluded that an inadequate repair to a spar on the wing caused the accident, though suspicions of a cover-up regarding accidental damage were noted. A government inquiry in July 1913 faced accusations of whitewashing from Mr. Joynton Hicks MP, leading to further criticism from Pemberton Billings in 1916. Billings argued for better manufacturing standards to prevent similar tragedies among servicemen. A subsequent government inquiry in August 1916 attributed Arthur's death to pilot error and risky flying, stating he was killed by his own foolishness, a conclusion disputed within the Royal Flying Corps. The final report, released in November 1916, aimed to restore Arthur's reputation, though it was not made public until Christmas that year. During World War I, it became evident that whiskey and rum were not the only spirits frequenting the bar of the Scottish base. The ghost of Lieutenant Arthur was said to haunt the vicinity of the officers' mess during this time. According to a World War I pilot newly stationed at the base who'd never met Lieutenant Arthur, he recounted witnessing a chilling apparition, the transparent figure of an aviator reportedly gliding up to the door of the old aerodrome bar before mysteriously vanishing into thin air. After sharing this eerie experience with a friend, he was shown a picture of Arthur that strikingly matched the ghostly apparition, further deepening the mystery surrounding the haunting at the base. Major Foggin, the senior flying instructor, known as a rational, grounded man, gave detailed accounts after witnessing the ghostly airman on numerous occasions in 1916. One autumn night, when he was making his way to the officers' mess, he saw the unmistakable ghostly figure walking in the same direction as him. He hastened his steps in an attempt to catch up with the wraith, closing the distance to just a few feet. As he stretched out his hand to touch its shoulder, the spectre abruptly vanished upon reaching the door. Being a rational chap, he obviously put the sighting down to confusion or an hallucination due to overwork, and didn't initially speak of his encounter for fear he would jeopardize his position, until he saw the figure again. 2 nights later, at midnight, he saw the same figure, swinging his helmet near the old mess. In later life, Foggin related to famed author and parapsychologist Peter Underwood that he, along with his station commander and several flying instructors, saw the spirit on multiple occasions that autumn, and he himself could recount 5 sightings over the space of a few weeks. Each time the figure disappeared at the door to the officers' mess. One night, one of the flying instructors woke to find his room bathed in a dull, eerie glow. As his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he was startled to see a man in uniform sitting calmly in a chair, the apparition surrounded by a faint, unnerving luminescence that seemed to pulse with a supernatural energy. The apparition's presence was unsettling yet unmistakable. Summoning his courage, the instructor challenged the intruder, only to watch in stunned silence as the figure vanished before his eyes, leaving the room in darkness once more. 3 years after the first sighting of Arthur, the results of the new inquiry, blaming the crash on a poorly repaired plane and not on pilot error, were released, and this was thought would bring about the end of the sightings of Arthur. That would prove not to be the case. In 1920, C.G. Gray, a friend of Arthur and editor of the Aeroplane magazine, published a story detailing the haunting. Gray recounted the ghost's appearance in 1918, particularly in the No. 2 Squadron's officers' mess, and identified the spirit as Arthur. The ghost also reappeared to base personnel in 1940. Rumours circulated that the ghostly pilot was actually a good luck charm and protected the staff at the base, though a counter-tradition supported by 2 flyers who wrote to Popular Flying magazine in 1934 suggested that their presence at Montrose negatively affected flying operations. Despite the limited number of sightings, Forbes Inglis reported several eerie encounters during the interwar period following the airfield's reopening. An RAF policeman named Norrie Webster experienced hearing heavy footsteps with no visible source while on patrol. Another guard informed Webster a few nights later that he'd heard the same sounds and saw a strange mist moving between the airfield's buildings. One witness described an encounter with a man in a flying suit on a foggy night beside Waldron Bridge. The man passed by without a word, and it was only later realised that the night was too foggy for anyone to be out flying, suggesting the impossibility of someone being there dressed like that. The onset of World War II seemed to mark an uptick in occurrences of ghostly activity. The most famous encounter happened in 1940 and was documented by Peter Underwood in his book The Gazetteer of Scottish Ghosts. In 1940, during the height of World War II, a hurricane pilot at RAF Montrose took to the skies to intercept a prowling Heinkel bomber reported in the area. Despite an intense search, he failed to locate the enemy aircraft. However, his attempts to land back at the airfield took a strange and unsettling turn. As the pilot approached for landing, he made several erratic and abortive attempts, each time pulling up at the last moment. Finally, he managed to touch down safely, but he was visibly shaken and incensed. Rushing to the station commander, he vehemently insisted that his landing had been repeatedly thwarted by the dangerous proximity of an antique biplane that appeared to be flying perilously close to his hurricane. The station commander, puzzled by the pilot's account, assured him that no other aircraft had been airborne that night. Moreover, there were no biplanes stationed at RAF Montrose. The pilot's story was met with disbelief, but his agitation and the clarity of his description left many wondering. The encounter added another layer to the already mysterious and unsettling reputation of Montrose. The presence of an old biplane, invisible to everyone else, raised questions about whether the ghost of Arthur, whose tragic death in a biplane crash, was still haunting the skies, perhaps attempting to warn or protecting the living pilots who now flew from his old base. During the same period in 1940, another mysterious incident added to the legend of RAF Montrose. On a clear day, perfect for flying, 8 planes took off from the airfield for a routine exercise. This exercise proceeded smoothly, and all 8 craft returned safely to base, landing without incident. But as the ground crew began to relax, they were startled by the sudden appearance of an additional plane approaching the runway. The unidentified aircraft landed, but to everyone's horror, it immediately exploded in a ball of fire upon touching down. The explosion was so intense that it shook the entire base, sending personnel scrambling for cover. As the smoke cleared, the crew rushed to the site, expecting to find wreckage and hopefully survivors. Instead, they were met with a shocking and baffling sight. There was no wreckage to be found. Not a single piece of debris remained from the explosion. It was as if the plane had vanished into thin air. Confused and alarmed, the station commander initiated an investigation. They contacted surrounding airfields to determine if any aircraft had gone missing, but no reports of a lost plane surfaced. No aircraft were unaccounted for, and no pilots or crew were reported missing. The inexplicable explosion and subsequent disappearance of the plane left the personnel of Montrose deeply unsettled. On the 25th of October 1940, the Luftwaffe launched raids across England's major cities. In addition to these southern targets, the northern region of Angus was also attacked. That day, a trio of Heinkel bombers targeted both RAF Arbroath, the town, and the RAF station at Montrose. The raids were devastating, resulting in the deaths of several people at Montrose. At approximately 7:20 in the evening, amidst the chaos, a fire broke out in the officers' mess, completely destroying the building. Among the items lost in the blaze was a safe rumoured to contain a report on the Montrose ghost, allegedly written by Major Impey. The details of this document remain a mystery, as does the precise identity of Major Impey. It's believed that the author of the report might have been Thomas Smith Impey, a member of a Quaker family with 7 children. Impey served in the Royal Flying Corps and in 1915 was active as a pilot in France. His service at the front was cut short due to injuries sustained from a fall from his horse, which rendered him unfit for frontline duty. By October of that year, MP had attained the rank of Major and was stationed as a flying instructor at Montrose. He continued his military career, receiving a permanent commission in the RAF in 1918, before retiring in 1922. The base may be haunted by more than just the spirit of Arthur. A transparent black Labrador has been seen following people around the museum, and following the tragic death of trainee pilot George Hogben in 1941, reports surfaced of sightings of his ghost wandering the airbase by close friends. It wasn't until the following year that an increase in paranormal activity at the base became notable. The most compelling account involves a flight lieutenant known for his tough demeanour towards ground staff. Following a heated argument with a fitter, during which he placed the fitter under disciplinary action, the flight lieutenant met his demise in a fatal crash. Speculation arose that the mechanic, aggrieved by the altercation, may have sabotaged the aircraft, leading to the tragic accident. Shortly after the incident, reports began to circulate about sightings of the deceased flight lieutenant haunting the site. Witnesses described seeing him clad in his full flight suit and goggles, appearing particularly around the Wedren Bridge area. The apparition was frequently spotted by guards, adding to the unnerving atmosphere surrounding the base. Some sightings even described the figure dressed in a distinctive white flying suit. One chilling encounter involved a young woman preparing tea in the naffy. Startled, she watched as a fully attired aviator entered the building, only to vanish into thin air right before her eyes. By June 1952, RAF Montrose had transitioned into an exclusive training establishment, yet reports of unexplained phenomena persisted among the men stationed there. One disturbing incident occurred in September 1947, when a guard encountered a man dressed in what appeared to be an outdated military uniform. The mysterious figure vanished before the guard could interact further, leaving him bewildered and questioning what he'd seen. In the preceding year, another serviceman on guard duty had a chilling encounter. It was around 3 a.m. when his colleague left for a smoke break, leaving him alone near a parked aircraft between the morgue and the control tower. Suddenly the doors of the nearby morgue swung open with force, startling the guard. From within emerged a figure clad in full flying gear, reminiscent of a bygone era. Shocked, the guard dropped his weapon as the morgue doors slammed shut behind the apparition, which disappeared without a trace. Investigations later revealed that the morgue building had served a different purpose in its past. It was speculated that the ghostly figure dressed in his flight kit might have been associated with the building's earlier use. The eerie sightings and the unexplained phenomena continued to fuel speculation and fear among those stationed at the base. Sir Peter Macefield's tenure at Montrose Air Base in 1963 marked a peculiar episode in its haunted history. On May 27th of that year, Sir Peter, accommodating an Irishman's request for a lift south to England, took flight along the east coast towards Turnhouse near Edinburgh. During their journey, he glimpsed an antiquated biplane flying in proximity to Montrose. To his shock, the biplane's wings suddenly gave way, sending it into a fatal spiral towards the earth. When Sir Peter turned to speak to his passenger about the horrifying sight, he found the seat beside him empty. His mind raced with confusion and a tinge of disbelief. He scanned the cockpit, half expecting to find the Irishman hiding, or perhaps crouched down out of sight. But the truth sank in as he saw no trace of his passenger. The eerie silence that followed was punctuated only by the hum of the engine and the unsettling realization that he'd witnessed something inexplicable. Not just the crash of the biplane, but the sudden disappearance of his companion, as if swallowed by the thin air of the cockpit. The man he'd given a lift to was Irish, so was Desmond Arthur. Is it possible this was Desmond's ghost? Upon landing back at Montrose, Sir Peter sought confirmation from ground personnel, but none had witnessed the incident he'd just observed. Returning to England, Sir Peter was further astounded to discover that the date was precisely May 27, 1963, 50 years to the day since Desmond Arthur's tragic crash at the same airbase. Encounters at Montrose are not solely confined to historical accounts, they continue into modern times. In 1983, driven by a passion for aviation history, Ian McIntosh and a group of enthusiasts founded the Montrose Air Heritage Trust. Through their efforts, funds were raised to establish a heritage visitor centre on the site. By 1992, the Trust had acquired the watch office and surrounding grounds, transforming them into the Montrose Air Station Museum. Exhibits were meticulously curated, offering the public a glimpse into the rich aviation history of the area. As visitor numbers grew, so did reports of inexplicable occurrences. As the exhibits were restored, so it seems was the ghostly activity. Footsteps echoing through empty corridors, sightings of a ghostly black Labrador, and disembodied voices became regular occurrences, witnessed by visitors and staff alike. Some reported fleeting glimpses of men in vintage uniforms who seemed out of place in the modern setting. Beyond the station's boundaries, reports surfaced of a World War II era plane roaring over Rossi Braes, a chilling reminder of the area's wartime past. Children playing nearby claimed to have seen a figure without a face, silently gliding towards them on the grass. Volunteer Ian Robb recalled a chilling encounter with a vintage phone in the CEO's office that rang without explanation, a desperate voice on the other end pleading for help. Equally puzzling was the PYE radio that sporadically broadcast wartime speeches and music by Glenn Miller, despite being unplugged and lacking an aerial. The site drew the interest of mediums as well. During a visit in 1990, an Australian medium suggested that one of the spirits haunting the station was a former lunatic who enjoyed dressing up as an airman. Another medium, named Kat Perks, reported encountering the apparition of an airman who appeared to be in distress, silently begging for assistance. In 2005, the Ghost Club held an investigation at the site, capturing sounds like the clicking of billiard balls and recorded knocks, suggestive of a spectral presence. They also noted strange occurrences in the HQ building, including doors opening of their own accord during their stay. Further investigations continued over the years, each yielding its share of paranormal encounters. In 2008, Paranormal Research Scotland recorded the voice of a spirit identifying himself as Sergeant Jackson, and possibly even a Desmond, though not confirmed to be Desmond Arthur. The Glasgow Paranormal Investigators' overnight vigil in May 2010 captured a barrage of unsettling sounds, voices, breaths, footsteps, and unexplained bangs. Their experiences included communications from spirits identifying themselves as Group Captain Stapleton, along with haunting messages lamenting abandonment and betrayal. These ongoing investigations underscored Montrose Air Station's reputation as a focal point for supernatural activity, where history and the mysteries of the afterlife intertwine in eerie and unsettling ways. Speculating on the origins of the hauntings at RAF Montrose, one might consider the turbulent history embedded in its very grounds. The land's history of violence, bloodshed, and heartbreak, spanning from ancient conflicts to more recent wartime tragedies, could have left a profound imprint on the place. The emotional intensity and trauma associated with these events may have created a fertile ground for residual energy and spiritual manifestations. Furthermore, the sudden and tragic deaths of aviators like Desmond Arthur, coupled with the stresses and uncertainties of wartime aviation, could have intensified the spiritual residue at the station. The psychological impact of such events on individuals and the collective consciousness of the base's inhabitants may have contributed to the ongoing reports of paranormal activity. Moreover, the relocation and expansion of the base over the years, coupled with the transition from a bustling wartime hub to a quieter training facility, could have disrupted and unsettled the spirits said to linger there. These factors, combined with the natural allure of a place steeped in history and mystery, continue to fuel speculation and investigation into the haunting phenomena at RAF Montrose. May those restless souls one day find peace.